Have you ever taken a survey that provided you with a list of potential answers and just been frustrated about the answer options? If so, then you have directly experienced how operationalization matters. Operationalization is the process by which a researcher takes an abstract concept and develops a concrete measure for it. My name is Christina Steidel. I'm an associate professor of sociology at the University of Alabama in Huntsville, and I'm here to talk about my new Sociology Compass article. I collaboratively wrote this piece with Regina Wieram, a professor of sociology at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. We titled it, "If All You Have is a Hammer, Everything Looks Like a Nail. Operationalization Matters." And we were inspired to write the article based on some of our own research findings. We studied women's underrepresentation in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM fields. Now, the concept of STEM seems pretty straightforward, and you can probably imagine a number of STEM fields. But when we start to measure exactly who works in STEM and who does not work in STEM, it gets a bit more complicated. Which fields do you think of when you think of STEM? Most of us would probably agree that chemists, mechanical engineers, and physicists are all STEM workers. But what about high school math teachers, nurses, or IT consultants? Are these STEM workers? To see how operationalization mattered, we started to experiment with different measures of STEM, and we found that it changed the size and direction of the gender gap when we included particular fields in or out of the definition. So here we're not talking about slight changes. In one case, we found that men were twice as likely to earn a STEM degree as women, and changing a few fields in and out of our STEM definition, we found that women were more likely than men to earn a STEM degree. So this is a huge difference in outcomes based on some very small operational decisions. We decided to write an article about it. In particular, we emphasized how paying attention to operationalization is important for scholars of stratification. And this is because measures of inequality often involve multiple layers of operationalization. We first decide how to assign individuals to social groups, and then we use these groups to construct measures of inequality. So let's take an example. For example, let's imagine that you want to study racial inequality, racial segregation to be particular. To determine whether a school, a neighborhood, or another space is racially segregated, first you need to know the races of the individuals within that space. Now, there are a lot of options for gathering this information, and you have undoubtedly filled out survey questions about race yourself. In constructing these questions, researchers somewhere had to decide things like how many categories will be included. Will individuals be able to select multiple categories or just one category? These decisions occur in what we call the first layer of operationalization. In the second layer of operationalization, we use these racial groups to construct our measure of segregation. In this layer, operational decisions that we made about race in layer 1 shape the types of measures that we can use and the outcomes that we'll find. Now, how to best measure concepts is a constant point of discussion among researchers. In our article, we describe some of these debates. We think about race, but also social class, gender, and religion. And we use real examples to highlight two things. First, operational decisions can greatly influence research findings, as we saw in our own research. Second, operational decisions have real consequences for power and policy. They shape our common sense understandings of the world and can justify or challenge existing structural conditions and the distribution of resources. So operationalization matters. So how can we improve awareness around issues of operationalization within the field of sociology? Well, ideally, researchers might operationalize concepts in multiple ways. When we use multiple measures of the same concept and we get similar results, we have a lot more confidence in our conclusions. We call them robust. Realistically, however, multiple measures are not always possible. We certainly don't want to avoid studying difficult subjects simply because we can't find multiple measures. Still, we would encourage researchers to clearly state why they're measuring concepts in a particular way. And we hope that consumers of social science research consider how operationalization matters, whether they're reading an empirical journal or watching the news. We hope that you enjoy the article. Thanks!